Our first panel host is Jeremy Olshan, editor-in-chief of MarketWatch. He is a graduate of Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism and a veteran of the New York Post and Smart Money. He won a New York Press Club Award for his stories on the effort to curse the Yankee Stadium, which is wonderful. He is a terrific speaker. I enjoyed his welcoming remarks to our crowd 2 days ago. Quite funny and enlightening, but more importantly, a marvelous journalist. Please help me welcome Jeremy and his wonderful panelists from MarketWatch.
Thanks, Mike. Excellent. Oh, sure. Great. That helps. Yeah. Thanks, Kim. All right. So I was trying to think, what could I tell you that would be most helpful here? And usually the answer to that is to be as self-deprecating as possible. So I'll tell you a story. My sophomore year in college, I dropped into my favorite professor's office, sat down, and sort of begged her, what classes do I need to take the rest of my time here to get on the path toward a successful life? And she looked at me for a moment. There was a brief pause until she said, it doesn't matter what you take. It's what takes to you. Now, this is the danger of asking a philosopher a simple question. She was like Yoda, but and it wasn't until many years later that I had any clue what she was talking about. But that's sort of what I'm going to talk to you about today. If you had told me back then that in 2016 I'd be giving a talk to you about money, I would have thought that either one or all of us were on drugs right now. You see, at the time, I was pursuing a career as far as possible from the pursuit of money. I wanted to be a fiction writer. I was an English major. But the more I've learned about money, the more I now see what my professor was getting at. To understand money, I didn't need to just learn about economics. I needed to study history, religion, anthropology, philosophy, math, and science too. In fact, fiction writing and money are actually sort of the same thing. Really. Both are totally made up. And before we get to our practical panel discussion about financial freedoms, I want to stress this. The most important thing to understand about money is that we, humans, we made up money. Money and writing were actually invented about the same time. Why do you think writing was invented? It wasn't so that we could have 50 Shades of Grey and Twilight. Writing was actually invented by accountants. Not artists. The earliest samples we have of writing say things like, you had 16 sheep and I had 4 chickens, and it was a way of keeping records of trade. That's where it all came from. Writing's a symbolic language to represent meaning, and money is a symbolic language that represents value. And what's really remarkable about this is humans have been around about 2 million years or so, but we've only had money in the form that we know it for less than, say, 4,000 years. So it's relatively new. It's hard for us to appreciate that newness and the weirdness of money because it's now everywhere. It surrounds us. It penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. In our galaxy, money is the force. Dave Foster Wallace tells a joke that 2 fish are swimming in a lake, and one says, "How's the water today?" And the other says, "What's water?" That is basically the whole problem for us with our inability to see money. I think about this when you watch a post-apocalyptic show like The Walking Dead. The zombies destroyed the money world. Rick and the other survivors have no need for investment bankers or accountants. They need engineers and axe murderers. But let's not knock bankers here. Another important thing you have to understand about how vital money is to the modern world, without the invention of banking in medieval Florence, there would have been no Renaissance. There would have been no Da Vinci or Michelangelo. Money created the structure to make all of that happen. In the novel Robinson Crusoe, those of you who don't know the story, he gets stranded on this deserted island and is trying to survive. And at one point, he goes through the wreckage of the ship and finds a chest full of gold coins and jewels. And he thinks, he's gathering all this treasure up, and he thinks this is totally absurd. That money in my current situation is now meaningless. It has no value to me. All this gold and jewels won't do anything to help me survive. But then he takes the money anyway. And I think that gets at our emotional and sometimes irrational relationship to money. The reason I'd say that, even if you are interested in just finance and investing, you should still read literature, is the way to understand the emotional dimensions of human life. One of the best ways is to go to literature. When it comes to money, spending, and debt, we all, I think, fall somewhere on the spectrum between Ebenezer Scrooge, the miser, and Madame Bovary, the spendthrift. I mean, people think Madame Bovary is a book about adultery. It's really about what happens when you overuse credit cards. It really is. What really is her undoing is she can't stop buying stuff on credit, like pointless trinkets and stuff. It's it's also to understand money and its role in our culture and society. You also have to look at religion. Jesus, famously says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. That was a problem when Constantine made Christianity the official religion of ancient Rome because they wanted the wealthy on board. There's a great book by Peter Brown called Through the Eye of the Needle, and he tells the story of how this seeming incompatibility was resolved, and which I think really explains a lot about our modern world. I mean, really what it came down to is making charitable giving part of the structure. Like at the time, the ancient Romans gave a lot of charity to have these huge games and gladiatorial contests. They sort of shifted that to charitable giving for the poor, and that was a workaround for that rule. Anthropology is also worth looking at to understand money. I mean, for instance, one of the fundamental things Adam Smith got wrong in the history of money, in his awesome book, Debt, The First 5,000 Years, anthropologist David Graeber pokes a big hole in the idea that before there was money, there were barter systems. It's interesting, actually, there's no record of any barter system ever existing that was not in a society that first had money. So barter came into being after money disappeared. There wasn't enough of it to go around to trade. Really fascinating book, how the debt really is the original. To understand money, you need to understand debt first. And finally, psychology also cannot stress enough how important for your own well-being. In fact, you should probably stop listening to me right now and go read Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. He's a psychologist who won the Nobel Prize for Economics a few years ago for showing how we're not only irrational about money, but irrational about it in predictable ways. I think being irrational about money is a good segue to the rest of this session, which will hopefully be more useful than what I just told you. But before turning things over to our moderator, Bob Powell, who's a columnist at MarketWatch and edits Retirement Weekly, I just wanted to repeat that it takes work to get smarter about money. It took me probably longer than hopefully it will for you. But I would say study up and probably don't major in English. But thanks.